episode of Our NC Radio. I am your host, David Hill. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I have a very special episode for us. We are going to have a chat with Alan Daniel. For those of you who are not aware who Alan is a former teacher, former substitute teacher, has kids in the Winston-Salem, Forsyth County School System, visits a lot of the committee meetings, a lot of the school board meetings, and has a lot of opinions on ways to improve the school system. And so I invited him on today to speak with me a little bit about the state of the school system in Winston-Salem as it stands currently. What are some of the challenges? From a first-hand experience as a teacher, Alan has a lot of really valuable experiences that he wants to talk about today. And so this is a very unfiltered, raw, and honest conversation from his point of view about the school system right now. Some things could be, viewed as controversial, maybe not, maybe so. I think he's just, a guy that has an opinion about the school system, has a lot of great ideas as well. And he has a lot of great stories. He's been in Clemmons since, before 1990. So the gentleman has a lot of experience here. He has seen the way things have developed and grown over the years. And so I really appreciate his opinion and his perspective on things. I will say that he does have more of a strict and more conservative leaning ideology. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation, but also conversations with people that have a little bit more of a progressive or liberal point of view as well. Really, the podcast is not meant to be partisan or affiliated with any political party or any specific ideology. And so the opinions, discussed in this episode are those of Alan. And we have a good conversation, just kind of hearing each other out. So I appreciate y'all checking out the episode. And if you are not already, please jump into our Facebook group. The Facebook group is Our NC Radio Forsyth County. You're also welcome to shoot me an email if you have suggestions for a future episode, or if you have someone that that you feel like would be a good guest on the show, or even topics that you wish I could cover in a future episode. I'm always open to feedback. You can contact me at my email. It's ourncradio@gmail.com. And you can also hit me up on Facebook. My name's David Hill. Pretty easy to find me, just living here in Forsyth County. So without further ado, let's jump into the conversation with Alan Daniel. Thank you so much. So I'm here with Alan Daniel. Thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Glad to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were just kind of getting caught up. I hadn't met you in person just yet. We kind of met online. I had done an episode about the school bus drivers strike, and you had messaged me and you kind of informed me that you're pretty involved, in local government and also, with the school decision making and that sort of thing. And so I'd love to just kind of get an introduction from you, maybe talk a little bit about kind of your history, how you got involved in this type of thing, and just kind of take it from there.
Okay.
That sound good?
Sure. So grew up in Clemmons, went to West, graduated there in '73. Went to East Carolina, located in Greensboro, worked for another company for about 8 years, and then started my own business in '87, doing software. And by 2015, I was still using the same software that I had started with in the late '80s, early '90s, and I tell people it was like a '65 Chevy with about 10,000 miles on it. It was better than anything you could get, but it didn't look new, so it was hard to sell.
Gotcha.
Better, more efficient. It was old green screen software, much more efficient than Windows-based, because you can, in a head-down application like accounting, you don't have to look at the screen to point and click. So, but younger city managers would come in, it was local government software. They would come in, want to make a change, And I was trying to develop my own apps with a Windows look and feel while maintaining my own, and it was not happening fast enough.
Gotcha.
And so I saw an opportunity they were asking for STEM teachers. There was an organization.
And that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics?
Right.
Got it.
So there was a grant-funded organization called North Carolina New Schools, which started the early college program in North Carolina. And they had a deal where if you would do a one-year internship during which they would pay you a small stipend, quarterly stipend, go through 3 online courses, education courses, then do a one-year internship, basically like student teaching.
Okay.
So I did that I said, I applied and got accepted, did a one-year internship at Early College of Forsyth, teaching math.
That's not around anymore, is it?
It is. Early College is around.
Early College of Forsyth.
Yes.
Okay.
And but unfortunately, North Carolina New Schools declared bankruptcy on April 30th before we were supposed to finish the year on May the 9th.
Oh, gosh.
And so they didn't pay for my summer course, so I didn't have all the education I needed to get my license. Nor did I have their assistance, which they were going to grant, to help me land a job. So I went looking for a job and landed a job at Mount Tabor, teaching. I was supposed to teach Foundations of Math 1, and Math 2. And North Carolina is unique in that they do what's called integrated math, as opposed to like you grew up with Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Trig. Well, in order to get teachers to convert to their new way of doing things, they totally scrambled all of the courses to make them redo their teaching. And so my internship was on Math 2, so I thought, if Math 2 is the highest level I'm teaching, I'm good. Because if I can do Math 2, I can do Foundations of Math 1, which is for the kids who aren't ready for Math 1, then Math 1 and Math 2. And about 10 days before, 10 days before school started, about 4 days before boot camp, my week before school, I was told that they were taking my Math 1 course because that's a state test by which they grade the school. And they apparently didn't trust me to do well enough to boost the school, and they were going to give me an AFM course. And I said, what's AFM? And they said, Advanced Functions and Modeling. I said, what's Advanced Functions and Modeling? Well, it's a Math 4. It's a junior, senior level course, and it's all word problems. I'm like, great.
Oh, wow.
And so...
That sounds tough.
Yeah.
This is at Mount Tabor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fortunately.
And when was this again?
That was in, so my internship was 15-16. I started teaching in the fall of 16.
Okay.
And gave my first test. That was, AFM was my first period class. Gave my first test. 11 out of 24 kids failed it. I'm like, wow, I didn't do that bad.
That's rough.
And so I spent probably 40 hours evaluating that test, trying to see what I had done wrong, and learned that they didn't know 5th grade math.
Oh.
Because AFM, any word problem, it's just a matter of translation. So you read the problem, you translate the words into an expression or an equation, and then you solve it.
Yep.
And I said, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on how to translate the English to math. Y'all have been solving equations since 5th grade. And that was a big assumption that was totally incorrect. What I determined as I evaluated those tests is that what I had taught them, they did pretty well on. Most of them set up the equation pretty close, if not totally accurately, but they couldn't solve an equation. They would do stuff like if it said 8 plus 3 times something in parentheses, they'd go, okay, 8 and 3 is 11, and then they'd distribute. Or they'd say 2x squared times 3x is 6x squared.
No, my brain's already starting to hurt because it's been so long since I've done this.
But it was basic 5th grade math.
Right,
But they
right.
couldn't.
No, it doesn't seem that bad.
No.
So what's so in doing this, what did you learn during that experience, and is that part of what kind of got you involved or wanting to get involved with in an official position with the school system?
What ultimately happened is, and what got me wanting to get involved, I had been involved just as a parent since 2011 when my kids started school. That was when North Carolina cut a lot of teacher assistant positions. And I presented a proposal to the school board to cut top salaries, save $50 million, or no, $1.5 million to save 50 teacher assistant positions. And of course they rejected that.
Shocker.
Yeah. And so I thought, well, and then as the business started to slow down, I thought, well, they need math teachers. What nobody told me was that if you give students the actual grades they earn, you won't have a job. So my first semester, my mentor teacher helped me put in grades. And everybody passed, even kids that did no work. And
so how does that help the student?
So the second semester, first grading period, all my kids were on a semester basis. In high school in this area, some classes are A-Day, B-Day all year, like AP courses, some other courses. Other courses are every day for a semester. And we're in class 90 minutes a day, which is a lot.
That is a lot.
And so second semester, first grading period, he asked me if I needed help putting in grades. I said, no, I got this. And I had told my students first day of second semester, I said, I'm going to tell you 2 things that no math teacher's ever told you. I don't give grades, and I don't give homework. And they're like, no homework? I said, no, we're in class 90 minutes a day. That's enough math for anybody. I don't know what your life is like once you go out that door.
Yeah.
So I'm going to teach 45, and then y'all are going to practice 45. Whatever you do at the end of the day, you put it on the shelf. I'm going to pull it off the shelf, grade it. That's your grade for the day. You do half the homework, you get a 50. You do it all, you get 100. And at that point, I had Math 2 Honors, Math 2 Inclusion, and Math 2 Standard. So while it sounds like it's all the same course, it's on 3 different levels, so 3 different plannings. First semester, I had Foundations of Math 1, Math 2, and AFM, so three courses to plan for. And they said, and so no grades, that means it's pass, fail? I said, no. I said, I don't give grades. You earn them, I write them down.
I see what you're saying.
And I said, but I'll make you a promise. If you don't work in my class, you will fail. Not because I will fail you, but because you won't learn enough to pass. If you do everything I ask you to do, you'll probably make an A. Well, at the end of the first semester, or first grading period, second semester, over half of kids in 2 of my classes were failing. And so I scheduled a work day the last day of the quarter. I said, any assignment you haven't completed, turn it in between now and the last day, or on the last day. I'll be here till bedtime. I'll put them in. And I had 30 kids show up after school working. I get a call to come to the office. I said, I can't come to the office. I got 30 kids in my class. They said, doing what? I said, making up work. They said, report cards are due. Grades are due in tonight. I said, I know, that's why they're here. And they said, well, it's urgent. And I'm like, tomorrow planning period? No, today, now. So I go in there, and data, or the instructional facilitator says, are you aware that 62% of the kids in 2-year classes have Fs? Yeah, because 62% of the kids in 2 of my classes don't work hard enough to pass. They said, are you aware that 30% of your honor students have A's? I'm like, yeah, because they work hard enough to earn A's. I said, in fact, they tell me I make it too easy to make an A. And they said, well, it looks like grade inflation and grade deflation to us. And I said, absolutely not. You know, I grade everybody the same. Whatever you show me on math is what you make. And they said, well, it'd be in your best interest to resign because we're not going to renew your contract. And so suddenly, you know, I had to finish out the year, but that was basically the end of my teaching.
This seems pretty straightforward. Like, it makes logical sense, right? Like, kids come in to learn. They are given instructions on what they need to do. They either do it or they don't do it. I'm just wondering, like, how, if you're trying to prepare kids for the real world and your students, let's say they show up to a job, they don't actually do the job, pretty quickly they get let go of that job. You know, it's a lesson that it's going to carry on, right? But the lesson of come in, do a little bit, you know, we need you to do this, but if you don't do that, we might just pass you anyway. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, like, where does that all stem from? Like, what is it, you know, something top down where it's like, you know, we want to show that we're a good school district, or this is a good school, so that we just need to maintain a certain level of passing students? Like, what is that? Is there money tied to all of that, or?
There is money tied to it.
It seems like we're wading a little bit into this, a little bit of a swamp.
Yeah, there's money tied to it in that every school district gets money from the state based on their last year's student population.
Okay.
Or actually, it might even be current year. I'm not 100% sure how that works, but the official number is the number of students on the 20th day of school. That's your count, official count for the year. And so, and the typical understanding is that if you fail a kid, they're more likely to drop out. And so if they drop out, then we lose money. But where we are, in my opinion, in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools, if you look at our population since before COVID, we've dropped from 55,000 students to it's right at 50,000 now, I think. And the thing that shocked me most as a teacher, I walked in as a 61-year-old white guy, you know, into a population that, while the population of Mount Tabor is roughly 50-50, or maybe 40-20 black, white, Hispanic. My classes were primarily black and brown. My honors class was 30% white. In some of my other classes, I might have had 1 or 2 white kids. And so that was their basis for saying that it was grade inflation and grade deflation. They presumed that I was giving the white kids better grades and the kids of color
Was
lower
that something
grades.
that they said to you?
No,
Like,
no. But how else are you going to take it when they say it looks like grade inflation and grade deflation when the predominance of these 2 classes that are failing are black and brown and the predominance of this class is white?
So how does race work into it? On the other, is it an administrative thing that, you know, they're looking at the student populations and kind of like is there like certain mandates that, certain folks have to pass, or like how does that affect everything, I guess?
Well, sort of a telltale thing. What I was going to say was most shocking to me wasn't that they were 5 years behind in math, is that I would turn my back and they would throw stuff at me.
Mm.
I mean, literally, I would put paper on the table and pencils on the table at the door for them to take to do their work because they didn't bring any. And they would break the pencils and throw them at me when I would turn my back. They would wad up the paper and throw it at me when I would turn my back.
Dang.
And
You weren't well liked. Is
So-
it just because you were, it seemed like you would be like stern but fair type of teacher, like a no nonsense type guy.
Yeah,
And are other teachers like, how do they manage that?
I don't know. I mean,
Do they kind of like buddy with everybody and try to make friends? And
well, I mean, the other thing is I wrote kids up.
okay,
You misbehave in my class, you throw something in my classroom, you're going to get rid of it.
right, sure, yeah, that makes sense.
And, the principal's response, I one day collected a quart-sized Ziploc bag of stuff kids threw at me that day. Coins, broken pens, broken pencils. And I showed it to him. And he said, "What's this?" I said, "It's what kids threw at me yesterday." And he said, "You can't turn your back on those kids. That's the expectation of behavior, that if I turn my back, they're going to throw stuff at me." And, it's a level of respect that whether I was a good math teacher or not, as a human being, you deserve more respect than that.
Right.
Especially as a 61-year-old.
Sure, yeah, agreed.
I'm old enough to be your grandfather. I'm probably older than some of your grandfathers. You treat your grandfather that way? Well, if you're behaving that way, you're not going to learn. And the kids in the classroom who do want to learn are either going to get caught up in the nonsense, or I would say, please stop talking. Now, never use the word shut up. That's disrespectful. Mm-hmm. Every time I said stop talking, it included the word please. Please stop talking. Please stop talking so I can teach. And they wouldn't even stop talking while I'm saying please stop talking. Mm. And the same kids that were disrespectful were also failing. And that doesn't look good.
Right.
And so we now have a code of conduct whose sole intent was to reduce exclusionary discipline among black and brown males, because they are excluded, suspended, either ISS or OSS, at numbers far beyond their percentage of the population. So the assumption is that it must be a racist thing. Mm. The assumption is that they don't behave any differently than anybody else, so the people that are excluding them must be racist.
Gotcha.
No.
Right.
And so I researched the company that they were wanting to contract with to achieve this code of conduct. And it's a company called, I can't believe I've forgotten it, Engaging Schools, I believe. And they had a website, and they touted a couple of districts they had worked with. One of them was Anchorage, Alaska, and one of them was Syracuse, New York. And there's a site that I love called School Digger. SchoolDigger.com. You can look up any school or any district in the country. And their data is based strictly on standardized test scores reported by the state. They don't get into, I mean, they'll show you the economics, you know, like how many kids are on free and reduced lunch. They'll show you demographics. And they'll actually break it down by socioeconomics, by race, by whether you're highly academically gifted or standard. But they had been in those two districts for an extended period of time. And sure enough, if you look at the exclusionary discipline in those districts, it went to nearly zero. And I thought, that's great. That's absolutely phenomenal. So now if I look at School Digger, I should see a corresponding increase in proficiency. Because if nobody's misbehaving in class, then everybody's going to do better. The kids that used to be excluded aren't being excluded anymore, so they can learn.
Right.
The kids who were being disrupted by the discipline or by the behavior can now learn.
Right.
There was absolutely zero improvement in test scores. So there's two ways to reduce exclusionary discipline. One is to ignore the behavior.
Right.
The other is to improve the behavior. Well, if you improve the behavior, the natural consequence is improved proficiency.
Sure.
But there is none. I mean, not just not a little bit.
Yeah.
None.
Right.
And it's not like these were in the 90th percentile to begin with. One or the other of them, I can't remember, was in the bottom, I think it's Syracuse, New York, is in the bottom 10% of the state of New York.
Oh, wow.
There's lots of room for growth.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing in our district is exactly that.
So this is an actual like policy now that's already been enacted?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, got it. So this outside company came in and basically said, we're going to ignore the behavior.
No, they didn't say that. We're going to use restorative justice.
Okay.
And
what does that mean?
Well, as I understand it, and I tutored after I taught, and that was the practice of the tutor company, was if someone was disruptive, they would get sent out, and before they could come back in, they would have to apologize to the people they offended, in which case, the way I looked at it was myself and all the rest of the students. So before you can re-enter the classroom, as a student, you have to come in because you disrupted the class in front of the class. You apologize to the whole class for wasting their time, and you apologize to me for being disrespectful and wasting my time. And then you're 100% back in. Okay, but if the behavior continues, then you run the risk of being excluded permanently. And the program I tutored in was a program where if you joined it in 6th grade and stayed through it through high school graduation, you had a full ride to Winston-Salem State, Salem, I think, College became part of that, Forsyth Tech. So it was an opportunity for kids from a lower socioeconomic who stood no chance of going to college to not only improve their education, but get a chance to advance it. And I understood that fully because, as I said, I grew up dirt poor. There was no way I was going to college.
Right.
Except I was not an athlete. I love sports. I was a wrestler. I was a marching band guy. But not that good. It's not going to get me a ride. So I knew my only chance was academics. And I ended up earning a full ride to East Carolina. And that gave me what I needed to be where I am now. And so I could relate to the kids. You know, the advantage I had was my parents were both very pro-education, both very smart people that just never had the opportunity. My parents were so old that when they were in school, they'd only went through the 11th grade. But they both finished school and understood the importance but they never had the opportunity to go on. I wanted to see the kids that I taught have that same opportunity.
Sure.
Well, the way I see it is if you give a kid who does absolutely no work passing grades and let them walk across the stage and get a piece of paper that says they have a high school education, when in actuality what they have is an elementary or possibly a middle school education, you're devaluing that piece of paper for my kids who graduated with better than my daughter graduated with better than a 4.0, my son's gonna graduate with better than a 4.0, and they get the same piece of paper as somebody who never did any work.
Right.
Well, it's not gonna take the colleges in this area very long to figure out that a diploma from Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools doesn't mean much. Just because you got a piece of paper that says you have a high school education doesn't mean that's true.
I'm interested on what your take is on this. So a lot of kids aren't really meant to go to college, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't know, did you hear in your experience that a lot of those kids just didn't see the value in it because they just thought that they were going to do something that was like totally unrelated to, what you were teaching or something that, in college, they weren't really motivated to get a degree. They were more like, I'll go get a job and I'll kind of move up the ladder, or I'll go play sports, or I'm gonna make TikTok videos and be famous that way. You know what I mean? Because I've heard from some interactions that I have that the folks that are not as motivated to go to school is because they just don't see the value in it.
Right, and I think that's a generational thing.
Yeah.
I think my parents understood the value of education.
Right.
Now, I had a friend who sort of did the same path I did, went from IT to becoming a math teacher and he lasted 2 years and went out of his own accord. But he said it's not that there's not enough math teachers. We're trying to teach too much math to too many students. There is no reason, if you're going to be a bricklayer or a plumber or an electrician, that you need math 4.
Sure.
Yeah.
If
you can measure and the thing that we don't stress anymore this is my personal opinion, but in our society, excellence is a thing of the past. Precision is a thing of the past. Eyes close enough. Well, if you're a nurse and you're giving drugs, if you give 2 milligrams instead of 2 milliliters, you might kill somebody.
Right.
Precision matters.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay? But we don't teach precision. We don't teach excellence. We accept mediocrity. And so we're a mediocre school system. We are less than 50%. If you look at our proficiency in Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools compared to the rest of the state of North Carolina, we're in the bottom 50%. The saddest, most shocking thing is our middle schools. We have 14 or 15 middle schools. We have 1 B middle school. We have, I think, 4 or 5 C middle schools, 1 D middle school, and 9 F middle schools.
Oh, wow. And
so
that
people
grading
say,
system
where do I send my kid to middle school?
The 1B, or, well, this actually kind of gets us to another point, is the voucher system, school choice, right? I know for me personally, I was homeschooled for a little while as a kid. It was all my sister's fault, because most things are. She got into trouble
And so my parents were like, you are not going to that school. We're going to take you out. We're going to homeschool you. If the schools are that bad, and I'm assuming more and more people are looking to alternatives, right? Like homeschooling or charter school or something like that. And the voucher system, gives parents, some money to go, to go do that instead of going to a public school. You're shaking your head.
No.
How does it work for somebody like myself that just kind of on the outside looking in, kind of hears some of this talk, right? What's the whole deal with school choice, especially here in Forsyth County?
Okay, so I'll preface this with I'm a conservative Republican
Okay.
who is 110% opposed to the voucher system.
Okay.
I absolutely believe in school choice, but it's a big lie. The state legislature says, there's 55,000 families on a waiting list to go to private schools, or charter schools or somewhere other than public schools. I don't see anybody out there building capacity for 55,000 students. There haven't been any 1,000-student private schools built in Forsyth County.
You're saying 50 there. The folks in Raleigh are saying that there's 55,000 students on a wait list for just Forsyth County?
No, for the state.
For the state.
Right.
Got it.
So
okay.
That's, 100 counties. That's, that's a lot of kids.
It is a lot of kids.
But what that money does, again, I can't prove it, but my math skills tell me that the only people that are benefiting, because, the other side of it is if you're a mom living in East Winston, wanting to get your kid into the best school they can get in, state's going to give you $7,500 maybe, okay? Summit School costs $35,000. Where are you going to get the other $28,000?
Right.
Or maybe they only cost $20,000. Where are you going to get the other 13? It might as well be 13 million. That's not an option for you.
Sure.
And you've got to get that kid to school.
Right.
You don't have a car.
Right.
How are you going to get your kid to school? You can't even count on the buses to get them to the schools we've got. And so that money for every...
Are you saying that a lot of the private schools are spread out to a point where, like, there's areas of Forsyth County that just really don't have that option?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, like, Forsyth Country Day is a great school.
Right.
It's in Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to locate where their clientele is.
Sure. They're going to set up shop.
Baptist,
Sure.
Calvary Baptist is a great school. Mm-hmm. Right there on Peace Haven and Country Club.
Right.
There are very few people on the lower socioeconomic end of the spectrum who have the means to get their kids to those schools.
Right.
They either work a job that they have to be there at 7 in the morning, and they get off at 5 in the evening, or 3 in the evening, or whenever.
Yep.
And they don't, their kids can't participate in extracurricular because they don't have the means to get them back and forth.
Yeah.
Those schools are not required to provide transportation.
Right.
They're not required to provide EC services, special ed services. So if you've got a special needs kid whose needs aren't being met in Forsyth County schools, private schools are not really an option. Charter schools are not really an option. They might take you, they might not. Right now, the 3A high schools in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County are all 100% magnet. They get to pick their kids.
They're what? They're
100% magnet.
Magnet.
Yes.
So what is that?
So you have to
mean?
apply.
You have to apply to
there.
go to the actual school.
It's basically like a
It's kind of like its own. It's like kind of like
private public school.
Okay, gotcha.
So Early College of Forsyth, you have to apply. They accept kids who are on the college track. You have to apply your 9th grade year. If you don't get in your 9th grade year, you don't get in, because it's a 4-year program. You come out of that school with a 4-year, with a high school diploma and a 2-year associate's degree. Middle college is only 11th and 12th grade. You've come out of that school, if I'm not mistaken, with also a high school diploma and 2 years associate degree.
Wow.
You've got to be focused. You've got to be college material. The other one is Atkins. My son was in the HAG program, highly academically gifted. The highly academically gifted middle school in Forsyth County is Haynes. Haynes is a C school. Okay, they're a C school because they took an F school and dropped a bunch of straight A students in on top of them. The behavior, and people are going to disagree with me, people are going to hate me for saying this, but the behavior is such that most of the families don't want to send their kids into that environment, even if it means getting a highly academically gifted education. Kids that go to Haynes are automatically accepted at Atkins. You've got a seat. But Atkins is a STEM magnet. So if you are college track,
Right.
that's the high school you want to go to.
Let's talk about earlier, like in the school system when they're going to like kindergarten or preschool or elementary level. I'm assuming that a lot of the issues that are being seen later on down the road kind of stem from just like a behavior that's been happening for a lot longer, maybe has been accepted.
Exactly.
Are the same issues? I'm not sure how involved you are with these type of schools, but are the same issues happening kind of down in the lower levels as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, it doesn't start in middle school or high school.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So what?
As you'll learn with your 2-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a disciplinarian. My kids might say I was mean. I never beat them. I might have spanked them a time or two, but
Right.
I didn't beat them. But there were expectations.
Sure.
And if you didn't meet expectations, there were consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And they were serious consequences. And I read something just recently. I read a lot about, especially early childhood, because to me, that's where you got to start. If you don't get it going
Right.
then,
Right.
it's really hard to turn it around. And this one child psychiatrist said, discipline begins at 9 months. If you let your kid slap you across the face and you laugh about it at 9 months, they're going to keep doing it because it got the response they wanted.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different like competing ideas. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, like I was telling you, I've got 2 kids in high school, and I've got my daughter, a 2-year-old, and the difference in where you learn parenting, because for me, the first time around was very much like, this is kind of how my parents did it. And, nowadays it's, there's an endless list of experts available with 30-second videos for you to watch about every little topic under the sun. There's all these apps, associated with, dietary habits, emotional intelligence for little kids, proper like teaching them how to do everything under the sun, right? So like it sounds like to me that like allowing the behavior, being strict and disciplining and all that kind of stuff seems old school now.
It depends on if you want the world to be like it is or like it used to be. I mean, when I was in school, no one would dare lay hand on a teacher.
Right.
fights among students were a rarity
Mm-hmm.
because there were severe consequences.
Yeah.
My favorite story about how kids love structure, these guys went to look at a daycare center. The guy put it up for sale and they said, well, you know, we're interested. And they said, okay. So they go look at it and there's a fence around the playground, chain link fence, 8 feet high. Kids are running all over the playground, climbing on the fence. You know, they can't get over the top of it. It's 8 feet
Sure.
high. You know, and they said, this looks like a prison. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take down that fence. And so they buy the thing and they take down the fence. And all the kids played in the very center of the playground, on the equipment. They never ran around in the yard around the equipment because they didn't know where the boundaries were. As long as that fence was there, they knew exactly where the boundaries were and they knew exactly how far they could go.
Sure.
And I mean, you don't have to be a hard case, but there have to be rules, especially in a society where you're going to put 20 kids in the same classroom.
Mm.
And they do that in kindergarten. They say 14, no, it's 20. You know, and some of those kids, more and more, are EC kids who have behavior issues.
Sure.
So if you let everybody just be kids,
Yeah.
some kids grow up in a household
Sounds
where
crazy hectic.
where all disagreements are solved by violence. That's the household they grow up in.
Mm.
Okay? Everybody says, oh, you know, it all starts at home. Absolutely. You're your
Yeah.
kid's first teacher.
Right.
Some kids have a great home environment. Some kids not so much.
Yep.
Some kids have a mom that's a single mom that works 2 jobs to keep a roof
Right.
over their head.
Right.
They're exhausted when they come home.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have time or the energy to be on their kid about every little thing.
Right.
Well, if a kid comes into kindergarten and they think the way you resolve something is to hit somebody, then we've got to get them to understand very quickly
Right.
that
That's
is
not- that's
absolutely
not
not acceptable.
Sure.
And, you know, you might get your way when you yell and scream. Well, not here. You know, the minute you cross that line into the school, there have to be standards of behavior. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And there have to be definite consequences. And I've changed 180 degrees from where I was as a teacher. As a teacher, the kids that were disrupting my class, just get them out. Just send them to ISS. Just let me teach my class.
Right.
And it worked. I mean, I wrote up 4 kids one day in the first 20 minutes
Oh my gosh.
and sent them out of the classroom.
Right.
And the next 70 minutes were the best 70 minutes of the year. And the next morning, the principal says, you can't send 4 kids out of the same classroom in 20 minutes. I'm like, why not? He says, what would it be like if every teacher did that? I said, it'd be a lot better. You know, it was the best
Yeah.
70 minutes I had.
So
He said, but we don't have enough ISS. Okay.
Well,
Then maybe we need to change our tack.
right.
But now I don't agree with that. Because if those kids are in ISS, they're not learning. Because
Right.
that ISS
Right.
teacher is not a math teacher. I mean, he can say, do your work, but if they need help, which they do, they're not going to get it. So we have a school in the county called Main Street Academy. It's the alternative school. Has a capacity of 650 kids. The most there were 2 years ago was like 62. Now, you're not telling me and getting me to believe that there were only 62 kids who needed the support that school can provide. It literally takes almost an act of Congress to get a child removed from a mainstream middle or high school and sent to Main Street. There has to be a hearing with people in central office, and they have to concur. Well, they're not in the classroom. they don't know what that student does on a day-to-day basis. And if that student is disrupting the classroom on a regular basis, they're not getting an education.
Yeah.
The teacher can't teach and the students can't learn.
Yeah.
They need to be in an environment where they have good teachers, very good teachers, small class sizes, and the SEL, social emotional learning, taught to where they learn better ways. I mean, it's okay to disagree with the teacher. I told my students all the time, if you see me make a mistake, I'm human. I'm going to make a mistake. Call me out. I'd get to the end of a 30-minute session and realize I made a mistake in the second step. And say, why didn't somebody tell me? Well, partly they weren't paying attention enough to know, but they were also afraid to call me out. No, call me out, because we all learn from making mistakes. That's how we learn math. One of the things I learned early in teaching was this whole thing of brain growth. Your brain doesn't grow at all if you do stuff you already know how to do. Your brain grows when you make mistakes and figure out how to fix it. And so, like when I graded, like you could, basically if I gave a 20-question test, everyone's 5 points. You could get the wrong answer on every single problem and make an 80, because the answer is only worth 1 point. The work's worth 20, or worth 4. So if you gave me the first step, second step, made a silly math error on the third step, and came out with a totally screwed up answer, 4 points. Okay? If you only wrote the right answer, and you wrote the right answer on every one of them, you got a 20. Because I don't know where you got that answer. Did you get it off your neighbor's page? Sure. You get it off your phone in your lap? Show me your work. Gotcha. And the only kid that failed my honors class failed because he refused. I mean, the test said 4 points for the work, 1 point for the answer. Well, he was going to buck me. No. I mean, I don't know where you're getting the answers. I got it in my head. Okay, so write down what's going on in your head. Right. But as far as early on, like to me, I was shocked when my kids came home with homework in kindergarten. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Homework in kindergarten?
Homework in kindergarten.
Interesting.
They already knew their letters. They already were reading.
Sure.
Okay, I started reading to my kids, and I'm a big believer in this. I started reading to my daughter when I found out we were pregnant. My son got a bigger head start than that because I was reading to my daughter before I knew he was there. Okay, and they have, now would they have done as well if I hadn't read to them? Maybe, I doubt it. But every day of their life, including when we'd go on vacation, the first thing we'd pack is books.
Right.
I mean, that's crucial. But other than that, kindergarten ought to be playtime. Go over to the Lego station, build something. You and Bobby and Sue go over there and build something. And I'll come over there and go, okay, what color are these? How many of those, how many big ones do you have?
Well,
How
for
many
some
little
kids
ones?
too, kindergarten is like their first real big social interaction, with, unless you go to a church and you've got, your Sunday school you go to or whatever. Maybe you got your kids in the neighborhood, you have get-togethers a couple times a year. But then all of a sudden you're out of the home and you're in with 15, 20 kids. It's a lot. I mean, the learning that happens, I'm just wondering, and I feel like for me, I'm just thinking, that's why I would want to put her in public school, is because I want her to get that social experience, because nobody lives in a bubble and cannot just kind of compartmentalize and just do your own thing and never interact with anybody else. Most of what we do is social, right? So it's beneficial. And so I guess that gets into we talked about discipline, but then the curriculum that they're being taught, you know, homework or no homework, all that kind of stuff. Um, I feel like we could probably do a whole nother episode on, on some of those, so maybe one of each of those topics. But I did want to get into a couple other things, and I want to be mindful of time. So the school bus strike, school bus driver, you corrected me in a couple things. Can you help me understand, because you go to the school board meetings, right?
Yes.
What's the latest with the school bus drivers strike, the difference in the pay and all that kind of stuff, or are we still kind of waiting on some things?
Okay, so supposedly, and most of what I learn, I don't learn at the school board meetings. Most of what you learn at committee meetings, which are not publicly broadcast, nor are there minutes kept that are publicly available.
Interesting.
So the only way you know what's going on at committee meetings is to be there.
To go.
And I think that's intentional. Because you'll get disagreements between school board members in a committee meeting. By the time it comes to the school board meeting, 99% of the decisions are unanimous.
They kind of were made behind closed doors.
Right.
Got it.
So what I learned the most from is I ran for school board in 2022. I set up a Facebook page and I posted data. Primarily that was during COVID and shortly thereafter.
What's the name of the Facebook page?
It's WSFCS data.
I think you did send it to me, but I just, for listeners that are interested, I'd like to put that out there.
So I disagreed with a lot of Republicans and a lot of other people on COVID. I was not opposed to closing schools, primarily because I was concerned about the health and safety of our teachers. My wife is a hospital employee. Her unit became the COVID unit. Mm-hmm. I didn't need Dr. O. I didn't need Dr. Fauci telling me what was going on.
Right.
We lived it.
Yep.
And so I posted the numbers every week. The number of infections in the schools, the number of teachers, and teachers would let me know when there had been an outbreak in their school among teachers. And the numbers when we went back, and it cost me in the election because as a Republican, I was roundly criticized.
Right.
But the way I looked at it is if we required teachers to go in, when we know, every teacher knows, I still work in a school setting in before and after school care. Kids come to school sick all the time because their parents don't have any choice. If they take off work, they don't get paid.
Right.
If they don't get paid, they can't pay the rent. So if you know you're in an environment where kids are going to come to school sick and this sickness might kill you, if you've got parents that are home that are my age,
Yep.
you're going to go, or that you're the caregiver for, you're going to go, I can't afford that.
Right.
I can't afford that risk.
Yeah.
Or I'm not willing to risk my family's safety. Whatever loss we had can be recovered as long as we have qualified teachers. I think we have used that excuse for far too long. What COVID did is point out the inequities of our system. Now, my kids thrived in at-home learning. They had me there all the time to keep them focused. They were themselves pretty well focused. Not everybody did well. I understand that, and I'm not minimizing that. But whatever loss we suffered should have been made up long ago. Should have been made up long ago. To put anything off on COVID now is just making excuses. You know, it's a convenient excuse for the behavior. It's
Sure.
a convenient excuse for the learning loss.
Yeah.
It's a convenient excuse for a lot of things.
Right.
But I think the thing about the bus drivers is partly the money. But what was shocking to me to learn, and I should have known it because I had a contact who sent me a copy of the email and I missed it. Back in August, or in July, you know, the school system changed the calendar this year. And in July, they said, what are we going to do about the hourly people? They're going to start work the first week in August, and it's going to be, they get paid on the 16th of September for the month of August. So they're going to work like 6 weeks before they get paid.
No paycheck.
So that's the way it is when you're an hourly employee. Okay?
Wow.
You know?
That's rough.
Well, it is, but, you know, so they, you know, the question was, do we go bi-weekly? You know?
Right.
And so they work until the 16th, and you got to have time to put the payroll together, so you pay them on the 30th.
Sure.
Well, we got 8,000 employees.
Yeah.
Our payroll system doesn't do very well with 4,000 at the middle of the month and 4,000 at the end of the month.
Gotcha.
If we do 4,000 at the middle of the month and then 8,000 at the end of the month and then 4,000, I'm not sure it can handle it.
Sounds like you have some more software to write.
Yeah. And so the other option would be to prepay. So that's what they chose to do.
Okay.
So they went to work August the 5th. They worked until the end of August, but they got paid on August the 16th.
For August.
For the whole month of August.
For the whole month.
So they
Just
got,
assuming they would continue to work and not miss time. It's assuming that they,
assuming,
yeah,
okay, that they stayed. I mean, we've had a
Yeah.
lot of turnover.
sure.
You know, how many of those people quit on the 17th
I don't
and
know.
walked out with 2 weeks of pay they didn't earn?
I don't know.
So, but so what they did is they said, okay, this bus driver, we think they're going to earn, I'm just throwing a number out here, I'm just making numbers up. They're going to earn $24,000 this year. So we're going to pay them $2,400 a month for 10 months. Okay? And so they get a check on August the 16th that says $2,400. It doesn't say how many hours they're getting paid for, and it
Yeah.
doesn't say how much they're getting paid per hour.
Yeah, I see the rub already.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, and they now no
So
longer punch in on a timesheet like they used to write their time when
Yeah.
they came
Whose
in. and write
decision
their
was it to do it that way?
finance and HR.
So you have an hourly employee that's not getting paid hourly, essentially, because
Well, they are, because what they would do then, and this was a complaint at the bus drivers meeting, we get a check that says $2,400
yeah,
and then a negative $180 adjustment. What's that? Oh, well,
Because
that's
they
the
didn't work
hours
enough.
you didn't work in August that we're making up in September.
oh, gotcha.
Yeah, but how many hours are we? Well, yeah. And a lot of the bus drivers did not know that they weren't still making $16.20 an hour. They were making $16.20 an hour last year. The state legislature gave all state employees a 3% raise. So now they're making $16.70 something, $16.76, I think. Well, they didn't know that because it's not on their check. If they don't stay up with the news,
Yeah,
and most of them don't, you know, most people don't. I'm not being critical of bus drivers,
sure.
you know. So the bus driver said, you know, we don't know, you know, and they said sometimes it takes us 45 minutes to get clocked in on the app
Oh my gosh.
because we can't get a wireless signal.
Oh gosh.
They're on their tablet on their bus,
Oh,
you know. And so they might drive to their first stop and try to log in again. You know, they're not going to sit there and be 45 minutes late.
right.
You know, Well, now they're not getting.
So they clock in when they get to their stop?
They clock in. They're supposed to clock in. My understanding is they clock in when they get to the bus lot.
Yeah.
And the bus lot is outside of a school.
And should have a signal.
Should have.
Yeah.
Sometimes doesn't.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that's another issue.
Yeah. And so at the end of everybody thinks that the big deal is pay. I went to that bus drivers meeting. It started at 6 o'clock. I got there at 6:30 because I don't get off work till 6.
Mm.
Until 8 o'clock, they told war stories. Not about their pay, about the behavior on their buses.
Mm.
And I'm going to be blunt and crude here, but it's just the truth. Kids smoking dope on the buses, kids having sex on the buses, kids jumping out the back door of buses,
Wow.
kids throwing stuff at the driver from the back of the bus.
Well, what you told me about your experience in the classroom, that doesn't shock me now.
Okay, but here's the deal. As a teacher, I can walk out the door.
Right. The bus drivers, yeah.
Or I can, if things get really out of hand, I can walk out the door and yell help.
Right.
Or I can walk over and pick up the phone and call the office.
Right.
Bus drivers don't have that luxury.
Exactly.
And so they were, and then there was a bus driver who finally made the news, was assaulted at the bus lot by a parent. The word on the street is the bus driver gave out treats for kids that were well behaved. Mm. One kid didn't get a treat. Mom came, beat up the bus driver, put the bus driver in the hospital.
Wow.
Just now got arrested 2 months later.
Wow.
All right, that's the kind of thing that, on top of the pay, okay, so Miss McManus got up at the end of that meeting and said, I hear you, and we're going to talk about changes to expectations, and I'm like, really?
Changes to expectations?
What a novel idea. That we're going to set up expectations for behavior on the bus, because the bus drivers were saying, I can pull my bus into the high school, I can turn my bus around and go back to the school and show the principal all this stuff on my dashboard and say, I want this kid off the bus. Well, this kid don't have any other way home. You've got to take him home. Not my problem. I'm sorry. You do that, you're on your own.
Right.
And you as the principal, when I, as a bus driver, bring my bus back to your school, that's now your problem. It's no longer my problem. And if I were a bus driver, I wouldn't last very long, because I'd say, okay, I'm going to sit right here until that kid's off the bus.
Yeah.
And we might be here till midnight. But I'm not going to drive if I'm running the risk of risking the lives and safety of 40, 50, 70.
It makes sense.
I didn't know there were buses that hold 70 kids.
That's wild. To think
with,
about.
with one adult.
That's crazy.
And so Miss McManus got up and said, well, we want you to understand that we're doing all we can about pay. We've got this pay study and yada, yada, yada. And you did get a 3% raise, so we're making 1676, 79, whatever it is. And, we did, as a district, do the local longevity, where you earn an additional 1% of pay for every 3 years of employment. Okay, let's think about that a minute. I'm making $16.76 an hour. So I stay 3 years, and my pay's going to go up a little bit on step.
Sure.
But my bonus longevity is going to be 17 cents an hour. Wow.
Yeah, not much.
Yeah.
And
so the bus driver said, yeah, but my longevity went down this year from last year. Miss McManus looked puzzled. I'm not sure how that can happen. And they're like, we're not either, but it did. And so I posted on my site. I said, if any, and this goes for all classified employees, not just bus drivers. If any classified 10-month employees saw a decrease in their longevity, message me. I got 2 messages. One, it went down $45 a month. Another, it went down $69 a month. And I thought, well, maybe they're getting paid for 10 months. Or maybe they're going to get 11 checks this year, and last year they got 10, whatever. But if I multiplied the longevity monthly times 10 and divided by 11, I mean, you would expect it to be less, right?
Right.
It was still not close.
Wow.
And nobody seems to understand that. And I said, have y'all reached out to HR? Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you reached out to payroll? Yeah. What did they say? They're not doing anything. They don't know what's wrong, but there's nothing they can do to fix it.
Wow.
All right. So they said, okay, we hear you. So what we're going to do, and I've asked this question and I haven't got a good answer. The way payroll used to be done for 10-month hourly employees is you would work the month of August and you would get paid on September 16th. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then you'd work the month of September and get paid on October 16th.
Right.
They would adjust your leave and show you, okay, in August you took 2 days off. So 2 days of paid or unpaid leave, whatever.
Yep.
So, and you could reconcile that back to this sheet that you filled out every day. Okay, I worked 48 hours, they paid me for 48 hours. So they said, yeah, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So what we're going to do is starting in February, we're going to go back to the old way of doing payroll.
This year. February.
This
Yeah.
year. February
2025. Okay.
Okay, but wait a minute, how's that going to work? Because you're going to work January and they're going to pay you on January 16th.
Right.
So what, you don't get a paycheck for February? What if they paid you for January and you didn't work 4 days that they thought you were going to work? You owe them 4 days. What are they going to do? Send you a bill on February 16th?
Right.
But even if you worked all those hours, you already been paid for them. So what are they going to pay you
Yeah, I don't know.
February?
That's odd. What about the behavior on the bus? What are they, if anything, what is being done or what has
Nothing.
decided? Nothing has been done yet? I thought the
new-
superintendent mentioned that there
I
was
think
going to
it's
be some new
READ,
policies or something?
That comes into effect in January.
READ?
I think that's what it's
Is
called.
that what it's
I'm not
called?
positive.
What is it? You know what that stands for?
No.
READ policy?
Yeah. It's, if you look on the website, school website.
It's for behavior?
Yeah. And
But
and
the
basically they're
expectations
going to be held accountable. So as I understand it, different bus drivers will tell you different things, and it's like the whole thing with the code of conduct was to standardize consequences across the district.
Right.
Well, as long as you've got people involved, there is no standardization. Because if after I was a teacher, I was a sub. I landed a long-term sub gig, and I'm not holding back anything anymore. I was a sub at North, 6 weeks. It was horrible. It was worse than Tabor.
Mm.
And the first 10 days I was there, first day I walk into my third period class, there's this big black guy there, about my height, but about 250 pounds. And a lot of the coaches are EC co-teachers. So like they're
Gotcha.
a math teacher and a coach.
Yep.
And anytime you have EC kids in the classroom in high school, you'll have an EC co-teacher. And it's not that they teach the EC kids and you teach the Gen Ed.
Right.
It's just an extra set of
Yeah.
eyes and ears.
Sure.
And so I introduced myself and I said, you must be my co-teacher. And he laughed. He said, no, I don't do math. I'm the football coach. I'm ISS. I'm like, oh. I'm like, so, and he said, well, the teacher couldn't control this period, so administration asked me to come every day
Wow.
to this class
Just to maintain.
order.
Wow.
And I said, he said, matter of fact, we had a little incident in this class yesterday, and this was a Tuesday.
Mm.
And I said, about 1 o'clock? He said, how'd you know? I said, that's when they called me and said they might need me through the week. They need
my
a math
gosh.
teacher for the rest of the week.
Wow.
And he said, yeah, and she left. I said, yeah, about 1:30. I said, that's when they called me and said they definitely needed me. And after 10 days, he came in, he said, look, I've told administration, I think you got this thing under control. I'm going to go back to ISS. You know, I said, you call this under control? He says, better than it's ever been.
Wow.
But at that point, I could no longer get kids to leave the classroom. You know, if I would write them up while he was there, he would escort them out, take them to ISS.
Gotcha.
But once he left, I'd say, if you can't stop talking and let me teach, I need you to leave my classroom. I ain't leaving, and you can't make me. And so I gave up on trying to get them out of the classroom. I just would write them up, let administration know that they're disrupting my classroom, and move on. And in fact, in that particular classroom, I put all the frequent flyers in the row close to the window. And they told me, this writing up kids ain't doing any good. You need to make parent phone calls. So I stayed one afternoon, Friday afternoon, for about 2.5 hours making parent phone calls. And I had a mom say, you know, I wish I could just come in and see what goes on. I said, come on. She said, are you serious? I said, absolutely. I said, I'm not going to do anything any different if you're here or you're not here. I said, now Fridays are test days. I test or quiz every Friday. So if you come in, you won't see any teaching going on. Any other day. She said, do I need to make an appointment? I said, no, just come to the school. You have to check in at the office, tell them you want to observe my classroom. And so one day, one Wednesday, the assistant principal walks in during my planning period, which was second period. He said, got a mom in my office wants to observe your third period class. And I smiled. And he said, I said, good. He said, good? I said, yeah. And he said, so how's it going? I said, about like it's been going for the last 6 weeks. I said, except I ran out of D1 forms, discipline referral forms, on Friday. So here it is Wednesday. I hadn't written any up, but I got my notes. And he said, well, if they need to be written up, write them up, we'll take care of it. I'm like, it's going to be a stack of them. He said, we'll take care of it. And I had told Mom, if you want to see what it's really like, come in before the period starts. I said, I got planning before that. You know, come 5 minutes early and just watch them come in. Because they came in out of control. It wasn't that I lost control. I never had control.
Right.
And so she comes in and I said, okay, guys, warm-up's on the board, 10 minutes, get it done. This one's for a grade. 2, 3 kids start. The rest of them just
Do whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this day, and her son was usually one of the late ones. He'd come in anywhere from 2 to 20 minutes after the bell. And I asked her, I said, and I called all my students Mr. and Ms. I said, does Mr. So-and-so know you're coming today? And she looked at me and she said, I do not need my husband's permission. And I laughed. And I said, no,
that's funny.
I'm talking about your son. I call all my students Mr. and Ms. I said, it's a sign of respect.
Yeah.
You know. And she said, oh, no, he doesn't know I'm coming. I said, good, this ought to be interesting. Well, he came early that day. And he walked in and I told her, I said, just sit in the back corner. Like, you come in the door and it's back there. You know, there's a desk back there that I graded from. I didn't ever sit back there during class time, so nobody ever looked back there.
Yeah.
I said, they won't even know you're here. He walked in and for some reason his eyes turned straight to her. And he sprinted out of the classroom. And excuse my French, he said, my mother's in there. And she stood up and walked to the door and called his name and said, take your seat. And he sat down, and I figured she was going to go sit next to him. But she didn't. She went and sat back down. And so everybody came in, and I'm telling them, get it done, get it done, get it done. And nobody's doing it, you know. And she's just like, she says, is it like this all the time? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I said, your son's been good today, but yeah, normally he'd be part of what's going on. And she said, may I address the class? And I had talked to her long enough to know she was or enough to know when I had the parent conference that she was a preacher's wife. And I said, do you think you can keep it PG? She laughed. She said, I think so. I said, okay. So she gets up and reads them the Riot Act about respect, and this is their opportunity for an education, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't know how Mr. Daniel can stand this, but I can't. I'm out of here. And she left. And I said, okay. As soon as she walked out the door, he says, why did you tell my mom to come? I said, Mr. So-and-so, I didn't tell her to come. I had a conversation with her over the phone, and she said she wished she could come and just see what goes on, why you're struggling. I said, I would guess she came because she cares, but that's a conversation you'll need to have with her.
Yeah.
And everybody's picking on him, you know, and I said, okay, rewind 10 minutes. I'll give you a chance to get this warm-up done, and then we need to move on. But this is for a grade, so get it done. I walk around, and I might have picked up 6 that had been completed out of 20. And there was a knock at the door. And I'm like, oh, Lord, she's gone and got the principal. You know. And I opened the door, and it's just her. She said, can I come back in? She said, yeah. I said, yeah. She said, can I address the class? I said, yeah. And she said, not only, and the last thing she had said on her way out the door was, y'all show this man some respect.
Mm-hmm.
She said, not only do you not show him any respect, you don't show me any respect. She said, I've been standing out there for the last 10 minutes listening. And she called her son by name, and he said, she said, Mr. Daniel is right. The reason I'm here is because I care. Now, as far as your language, we'll have a conversation with your dad about that when we get home. And she sat down and watched the rest of the class.
Yeah.
And so that evening, that afternoon, well, when I went to meet her at the office, I picked up a stack of D1s, filled them out, turned them in the next morning. It was probably a half-inch tall. And it was everything from Wednesday through that day.
Wow.
And the secretary said, what's this? I said, it's my D1 since Friday. She goes, okay. And within a half an hour, the phone rings. Can you come to my office for a meeting during your planning period? I'm like, sure. And I know I'm going to get chewed out for D1, right? I walk in, and it's all 3 assistant principals. And they said, get your grades in the book. Monday's the last day of class. Tuesday, we're going in a different direction. I said, so I wrote too many D1s, huh? And the other assistant principal says, well, it's not that you wrote too many, it's that the number hadn't changed in the 6 weeks you've been here. I said, that's because the behavior hadn't changed in the 6 weeks I've been here. I said, if you don't want me to write D1s, just tell me don't write D1s.
Right.
I wanted to say it doesn't do any good anyway.
Right.
You know? And you asked before about what do teachers do?
Yeah.
I talked to other teachers, and they said, one teacher said, I ain't written, and I knew this guy's
They
class.
just don't
'cause
do it.
I
They don't write
walked
'em
by
up.
his class every day, and his was just as crazy as mine.
Yeah.
And he said, I've probably written 2 D1s in 5 years. I said, what about all those kids in here? He said, as long as they don't destroy the class,
Yeah.
you know, I gather the ones that want to learn to me,
Yep.
and the rest of them, I just don't worry about it.
That's wild.
But so, you know, basically I was out. And then but I continued to sub. That was on like October the 30th of 17. I continued to sub all over the district until November the 14th. And I went and spoke at a school board meeting. And the meeting that night was at West Forsyth. They were meeting in different places to give people an opportunity to.
Yeah.
And I said, as a parent and then a volunteer and then a teacher and now a sub, I've seen the culture in various elementary, middle, and high schools in the district. Mm-hmm. And it is shocking. There's no respect for authority. There's no such thing as classroom discipline.
Yeah.
I said, if you attempt classroom discipline, and I pointed to myself, I said, it's professional suicide. I said, as one young lady said on her way out of my class for the 2nd time in a week for refusing to stop talking so I could teach, somebody's gonna get fired. And listen, 2 weeks later,
There you go.
she was right.
Yep.
And the next morning, that was at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, before 7 a.m. the next morning, my sub-credentials had been removed from the district.
Yep. Wow.
So I was no longer eligible to sub anywhere in the district.
Wow.
And the reason I say payroll's a mess, in the 7 paychecks that I got as a sub, not one single one of them was correct.
Dang.
They either overpaid me or underpaid me.
So I feel like we could still go on and talk about some other things too, but I think this is probably a good spot to end it here. I think that it was a good, honest conversation, which definitely needs to be had. More should be had for sure. It seems to me that there's a lot of issues, especially when you go to, middle school and high school levels with just, it just seems like the system is not working properly, and I don't know how to fix that. And I'm sure there's some ideas that you might have that we can talk about maybe in another sit down like this. But I think it's going to be eye opening for some folks that maybe aren't, really understanding what's going on. I hope that this kind of helps bring some attention to the issues, and I definitely am going to, follow up and take a look at the policy that they've got on the website, and if there's anything that happens, I guess, in the meantime, between now and when we talk next, I'll try to talk about it on the podcast, and then if people want to kind of catch up with you, and you had mentioned, sending you a message and that kind of thing, what's the best way to do that?
Through Facebook.
Through
Just
Facebook?
Facebook Messenger.
They're just Alan Daniel?
Well, the WSFCS data.
Got it.
Some people do
WSFCS
message
data.
me. My personal Facebook page is locked down tight
Yeah.
because of the stands that
Sure.
I take.
Yeah, no, of course.
I don't
Makes sense.
allow, even on my WSFCS data, I allow people to comment, but I
Yep.
don't allow people to post.
Got it.
And there's a disclaimer on there that it's my page,
Yeah.
and if you disagree with me,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
But you've got to disagree respectfully,
Sure.
and you can't just say you're full of it.
Right.
Back it up.
Right.
And I will say that I get criticized for and this is a district quote, my constant negativity. And there's this thing is there's lots of wonderful things going on at every school
Yeah.
in this district.
Well, definitely, I'm not partisan, and the show is independent, and I am going to try to get someone with a very different opinion of kind of the school system, what's going on, how we fix it, all that kind of stuff, just so everybody can hear both sides.
Right.
And it's probably going to be an open invitation to really anybody on the board that wants to talk. But everybody has the right to their opinion, and everybody has their own experiences.
Right.
And I think it's great that you're talking about your experience in the school system. And, for those that, maybe want to be dismissive, like this is real life account what happened when you were at the school. So, I mean, whether they want to accept responsibility for that or not, or whether they think that that's on the teacher, on the student, on the household, is really like obviously a team effort. But there's a lot to get to. There is a lot to get to.
And I will say this, when I started teaching, I honestly thought that because I saw in my own kids' classrooms the kids that were so far behind. And I blame the teachers. I'm like, these
Right.
teachers aren't teaching anything, or
Right.
they don't care, they're just passing these kids along.
Right.
Well, now I get it. And it took me about 3 weeks as a teacher to realize that teachers are about the only thing right with this district. Bus drivers, teachers, the kids, the people in the trenches
Yep.
that are face to face with the kids,
Yeah.
they're doing everything they can.
Yeah.
They're not getting enough support. And I'll end with this, and it's been my big thing. 2 years ago, I believe it was, I'm almost positive, central office management personnel got raises including Mrs. McManus, and multiple people got raises in excess of $30,000 a year.
Wow.
That's a raise bigger than the total annual salary of 25% of our employees.
Wow.
Okay? And yet we can only give bus drivers and hourly people a 1% every 3
Sure.
years.
Yeah, that's wild.
You know, and the other one, and this one goes out in the weeds too, but in 2020, in the March election, the citizens of Forsyth County passed a 1/4-cent sales tax increase that was supposed to supplement teacher pay.
Right, right.
There was a $15 million payroll error at the end of the first year.
Mm.
And since then, there has not been an increase. The expectation the first year was that they would bring in 11.7 million because it was COVID.
Yeah.
They made it very conservative. Instead, they brought in 17 million. So the next year, they increased the budget to 17 million. Increased the
So they increased the school, the sales tax designed to go to teachers goes to the school budget, the school board budget, whatever, for the county. And does that not correlate directly to teacher pay? It goes to other
because
programs,
if you
or?
look at, so it went to 17 million.
Yeah.
That funded a $200 increase, I believe, a month. So
$200 a month.
$2,000 a year. Since then, that has increased from 17 million to over 20 million.
Sales tax increase.
Sales tax.
Got it.
Increase
So
in
$3 million
revenue.
additional.
But there has been zero increase in the supplement. And they're like, well, we don't want to spend it all in case it were to drop. Well, this year it actually dropped 700,000. So the county schools had to give the county back $700,000. When they first were proposing to do this increase to fund teacher pay, I was adamantly opposed to it. Not that I'm opposed to teacher pay increase.
Right.
It's the wrong way to fund it. What I said is you all should tell the county commissioners exactly how much money you need and let them figure it out. Because if you put them on a sales tax increase, they're going to say, you got what you asked for.
Sure.
And that's exactly what happened. Because they approved it in March. The end of March, COVID happened.
Yeah.
I went to the next county commissioners meeting and I said, what happens if we don't make budget? And Don Martin said, they asked for a tax increase to fund teacher pay. We gave them their tax increase. The voters approved it. We're not supplemented. And they haven't. And that was in 2020.
Wow.
So they have, but they did mandate a $19.8 million base supplement. Well, when the county increases supplements, like our principals, our high school principals, supplement is based on their pay. It's 52.5% of their pay. So a high school principal gets a base salary from the state and then an extra 52.5%.
Wow.
From the county. Well, just to use round numbers, if you're making $150,000 a year and 50,000 of that is coming from the county, when you get a 3% increase, 3% of that increase also comes from the county. You know, so 3% of 50,000 comes from the county.
Right.
3% of 100,000 comes from the state.
Yep.
Well, that 19.8 million hadn't changed. And that's the base supplement for all, you know, other people. The sales tax supplement is called Article 46. It's supposed to go only to certified employees. Well, here's the problem. It doesn't just say teachers. There are certified employees holding administrative positions in central office.
Gotcha.
Are they getting part of that Article 46? I have asked for an accounting for that for 2 years and have yet to receive it.
Wow.
Because they can't. Because they don't separate it out in
Right.
payroll.
For teachers.
Well,
Yeah.
they don't separate, they don't designate how much of your supplement, like teachers get a county supplement,
Yeah.
which hadn't gone up in years,
Right.
and then they get an Article 46 supplement, which hadn't gone up in years. But if you look at it on their check, it only has one supplement number. So they don't know how much of that money is going to teachers and how much of it might be going somewhere else.
Well, that's wild to think about.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. I really appreciate
to
your
do it.
time. I appreciate your passion for the topic. It's honestly, it's really interesting, and it's a deep dive for sure. We'll have to get together again sometime very soon and just kind of talk about this a little bit more. I'd love to dive into more of the numbers, and you're a numbers guy, right?
Yep.
So
They
we
don't
could,
necessarily like that,
but hey, no, it's good because it's the truth, right? You can't hide from it. So yeah, awesome. Well, I appreciate everything and appreciate your time this afternoon, and we'll look forward to next time.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Thanks. Appreciate the opportunity.